You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, please let me see your ticket stubs for the Double-Edged Double Bill. This week, Fast and Furious determines the fate of family. Each week, Adam Thomas and Thomas Mariani will come to the table to discuss the randomly selected yin and yang of a double feature. Then, both to pick a number between 1 and 10 in order to seal their fates for the next episode. One will have 2 good movies, the other 2 bad ones. Let the chaos begin. I'm Thomas Mariani, and give me my damn veggies.
I'm Adam Thomas, and I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Oh, you know what's missing there is a bit of a Vin Diesel voice, Adam. You're so good at the Vin Diesel impression, you gotta break it out for this.
And I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
Because you are Groot. I assume that's the idea. But, you know, Adam, we're just too ill-equipped. It needs at least another member. We need someone else to be part of the crew, someone to bring over... Yeah, more family to bring over. Of course, you know, someone who can maybe bring over some brewskis of some specific brand, I'm not sure. And we got a returning guest to do just that. It is Mr. Ryan Corderman. Ryan, welcome back, fam.
Hey, I got all the Coronas we could drink, boys.
You think they're going to stop doing that after last year? You think they're going to cut their ties?
Yeah. They should double down.
Well, the last year they're drinking Budweisers. Yeah, double down on it.
Well, yeah, to be fair, as you were kind of mentioning, they did kind of break that tradition in one of the movies we'll be talking about. One of many sacrilegious things that one of our movies does is completely drop the corporate sponsorship of Corona in such a disastrous way. But Ryan, we really wanted to have you on the show because this is episode admitting that we've been planning for a while. Because this was originally supposed to happen back when F9 was supposed to come out last year. We had this all planned. And full disclosure, we did want to have our buddy Shaquille on at that time. We invited him back on, but Shaquille has had some, some personal stuff that's been going on, and we wish our fam the best. We'll have him on as soon as he's able to come back on. But Ryan, you were a very close second, because I know with our topic for today, which is the Fast and Furious franchise, which was chosen obviously because F9's coming out, but also our patrons ended up choosing this, between this and just regular Vin Diesel vehicles. And I'm kind of glad we're going with Fast and Furious, because it's such a specific franchise of such an interesting note. And I know, Ryan, you've been a fan, I think, since day one?
Close to day one. I
day actually, 2, 3, maybe.
Yeah. 2 day, second day. I came onto the series. I got the DVD for Too Fast, Too Furious, and then after that, I was like, oh, I'm watching these.
A DVD. I assume that you played on a stolen portable DVD VHS player of some sort.
I had to drive under a semi just to get to it. It was cool. It was very cool. But yeah, I've grown an immense love for this series, especially as it's gone on and it's gone sillier. It's the sillier it gets. It's almost like the more I start to become more fond of it.
I mean, naturally, given your last episode was on our Criterion Collection episode, you're a fan of true cinema. That's what Fast and Furious really is. Where's that box set? When's that happening? I would the classy cover with Vin's bald head reflecting a car. It's in cursive font. Fast and Furious collection. But Adam, I know also you've been a pretty big fan, or at least a viewer of this franchise, if not maybe a fan of all the films. In fact, we have movie nights that we do off mic, and we went through all the movies recently. And what is your opinion on this very odd franchise?
I saw the first one at the show. I had a lot of friends who were into tuner cars and everything at the time, so I was like, this movie was their Bible, the first one. Then the series got really fucking wacky, and at first I was like, this just doesn't make sense, how these nerds who steal DVD players and tune up Honda Civics are all of a sudden international hijackers. And then I got over myself and realized, Oh no, this is it doesn't have to make sense because none of this should make sense, and it doesn't. So yeah, I love the series now, especially sort of after the rewatch we did together. Really sort of help endear itself to me even more. I still don't know what they're doing with Charlize Theron's hair, though. I still don't get it. That I don't understand. And by the way, so what you were saying earlier about Shaq and Ryan. So would you say Shaq's like the Kurt Russell and Ryan's the Scott Eastwood? Because I don't
No, I'm not. I'm not going to put that on Ryan. I would not say he's the Scott Eastwood.
I would say, to be fair, because I think me and Shaquille are very equal hype men. He's the Tyrese to my Paul Walker. Or vice versa.
I don't know. I think you're both just Ludacris and Tyrese off to the side.
Dude, okay, I'm good with that.
Who is who? Who's to say? But I'll tell you what. You're both at least Fast Five era. Tyrese and Ludacris.
But what I have to ask you, Thomas, is did he grab that ass or did he slap that ass?
You know, I'd rather not answer that question. But I'll at least say that from my history with the franchise, I was not big on this when it originally was sort of forming in 2001. I did not see most of the Fast movies for a while. The first one I saw, weirdly, was Tokyo Drift, which was brought in near the end of a year in middle school as like just a movie for us to watch, which was really weird because that movie is very over-sexualized. Particularly, it starts off with like an almost upskirt shot of a woman. I was just like, I'm getting away with this, watching this in like an 8th grade classroom. That's weird. Eventually, I didn't really touch the franchise until a friend of mine in college was super hyped for 6, and I was a bit confused. Like, really, the Fast and Furious movies? Is that like that big a thing? He's like, dude, Fast 5 is so great. And he jumped on with it. And I think that's sort of like the big differentiating point is some people have been on since the first movie, and a lot of people jumped on with Fast 5, which is one of the 2 movies we'll be talking about tonight. And I think that kind of works because after, like, in preparation for seeing 6 with that guy, I marathon through the first 5 movies. The evolution of that franchise is so fascinating, from Point Break ripoff in the first one to kind of like a white trash Miami Vice in the second one, to weird kind of like Tokyo travelogue / race movie in the third, to a 4th movie that's kind of like, hey, let's bring back a few more people from the franchise, to 5 doing like even more with that and also going more bizarre than even 4 did, because 4 kind of raises a bit of the stuff. Even then, like, people say, oh my god, it was such a weird drastic thing for like 5 in particular to go silly. Like, you can see the seeds of that even in Too Fast, Too Furious. I would credit the late great John Singleton with kind of starting the craziness that only really elevated from there after that point. And it's just, once again, just so weird that this has gone from a likable Point Break ripoff to fucking the biggest franchise that's like massive internationally, an incredibly diverse cast. One of the weirdest stories where like everyone says, oh, what about the MCU? How weird that was able to build up. Guys, they started with Iron Man. To paraphrase Jeff Bridges, the Fast and the Furious started in a garage with a pile of scraps and made what we have now today. It's fascinating to see. Ryan, I'm so curious, what do you think makes the Fast and Furious have the staying power that it's had for so long? What do you think is like the main core element that really makes it go from, we're at 20 years now since the first Fast and Furious. Why has it endured for 2 decades?
It sounds corny, but it's incredibly earnest. Like, it doesn't feel like a cynical company thing all the time, like all the Star Wars and Marvel shit does. This feels at least somewhat motivated by Vin Diesel's desire not just to have a franchise, but to work with these specific people that he seems to like. I think the fact that they've been able to make as many good and heartfelt moments in this series, considering how silly it is. I mean, for better or worse, Marvel has had 30 films and never turned out as an emotional moment as the ending of Fast and Furious 7. Fast and Furious 7 in 2 minutes like does what Marvel wishes and what Star Wars wishes and what every other probably big franchise wishes. And I think what makes Fast and Furious so special is because it feels somehow still street level while being incredibly grandiose.
Even though we make fun of the whole like Vin Diesel family thing, there feels like a real family vibe to like, especially as more and more people return to this franchise. It feels kind of like, you know, the spirit of those family barbecues that happen in like most of the movies, I think, where like you get so much of like, oh hey, we're doing silly big over the top things, but there's usually a core of a familial connection. And I think that's why I have some trepidations about the future of the franchise, which I'll go into further with Fate of the Furious for that. But do you genuinely agree with that, Adam? Do you feel like there's a bit more of an earnest familial connection to this compared to other franchises?
I mean, yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I also think that, you know, they know exactly the type of movies they're making. They're making entertaining blockbuster movies, and they succeed for the most part every time. And you know, sometimes people just want to go to the movies to have fucking fun, dude. You know, and that's the one thing you could say about this franchise, even with its darker moments, and especially in the last one, Fate. But it's still never not exciting or fun to watch. There's always good beats, always good, you know, good acting, cool ensemble cast, good-looking people, cool cars. Like, they know what they're making, and it succeeds because it's so good at what it wants to be.
I would argue that Fast and Furious is probably one of the last franchises to actually be more concerned about star power than just IP. Because even with, I like the Marvel movies a bit more than Ryan does, but I can agree that it feels much more of like, oh, we're more dependent on like building a universe rather than as much building characters as like a secondary concern that they sometimes pull off, sometimes don't. And I think with Fast and Furious at its best, to tend to be like, we're going to up the ante in selling this, but also we're going to care about like our actors kind of getting a spotlight each. And I think that particularly is the case with at least one of the two movies we're talking about today. Because if you're new to the show, at the end of every episode, we pick a good and bad movie based on some random picking that Adam and I have. In the case of last time, I had the two good picks, and so we ended up with Fast 5 as our good pick. And then the bad pick that was from one of Adam's choices, which was the Fate of the Furious, the most recent main non-spin-off entry in this franchise. So there's a lot to talk about, so let's jump into Fast 5.
We'll do one last job, and then we disappear forever. First, we're gonna need a chameleon, someone who can blend in.
What else?
Utilities and weapons, guys who ain't afraid to throw down. Most importantly, we're gonna need 2 precision drivers.
You know we got that.
You're going down, Toretto? Not today.
In theaters and IMAX, April 29th.
So Fast 5 came out April 29th, 2011, directed by Justin Lin, who had directed previously Tokyo Drift and Fast and Furious, the fourth one. The fucking titles in this series are so fascinating. And would go on to direct the sixth one of Fast 6, and then is returning now for F9 after being absent from the franchise for a bit. And this is, like I kind of said, this was one a lot of people jumped in on, because this is where I think there were hints of this franchise getting sillier beforehand, particularly 4, I think, is a very transitional movie for that, where there's a lot of, like, big races that end up going into, like, weird, bizarre, like, almost wacky races kind of style shit that's going on, Mad Max stuff, even in the desert in the fourth one. But then 5 really is just like, hey, let's fully emphasize on the craziness of these set pieces, and also add a few new characters that kind of build this up to a, over-the-top degree, but also bring back some old favorites. And I think it does a pretty damn impressive job, to the point where I would say it's my favorite of the franchise. Ryan, as the Fast fan, do you agree?
Yeah, I fully agree. My 2 favorite ones in the series are Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 7, and I think I would give the edge to Fast 5.
Well, what makes it the favorite? What makes it the best of this now, like, 10 entry franchise?
For me, it revitalized my love in the series, because by the point I first saw it, I was kind of coming down off of it. I was in high school at the time, and I was just like growing out of Fast and the Furious. And then it was just something so charming about it all coming together in its like micro Avengers style team up movie. And the fact it's also a heist, and I'm a sucker for heist films. It's everything it needs to be in just the right amount. It's funny, it's exciting, it moves at an incredibly good pace. Everything about it works.
It's very much a smorgasbord of everything you would want out of a big summer blockbuster movie. I think I agree that's kind of what works about it. But Adam, do you agree with that sentiment about Fast Five.
Oh yeah, no, it's easily the best of the franchise. It's super super fun. I mean, let's face it, The Rock brought so much to this franchise with him, where it gave sort of a more. I'd say he's arguably the most credible threat that they've faced so far in these franchises. Is The Rock is a sort of manhunter with his team hunting them down in the favelas, and him and Vin Diesel beating the piss out of each other. It's super fun. I love the acting in it, and it looks legit. Like this might be the best looking one out of all of them as well.
Especially interesting given, like, there's a few insert shots shot in Rio de Janeiro where this mostly takes place, but it actually was shot in Puerto Rico for the most part. And yeah, I think it's cleverly disguised by Justin Lin. I think that's the thing, is this is a real testament to Justin Lin, I think, not just as a director of these Fast and Furious movies with, like, the cars and everything, but what I like about this one is where, like, you'd had some other kind of, like, hand-to-hand combat and other stuff in the other movies, but this is the one where it really breaks out into, we're gonna have, like, car set pieces, but also there's gonna be, like, foot chases, there's gonna be parkour, there's gonna be, like, big shootout sequences. It has, like, so many different varieties of action. I think that's why this one is so, I think, palatable to, like, other people to jump in on. Where, like, if you just jumped in with Fast Five, like, there's a few things you wouldn't maybe understand, like, about Letty, or a few other references that, like, are from the previous movies. But mostly, you can just kind of jump into this as, like, oh, okay, it's about a bunch of cons who are trying to pull the biggest heist, which is a huge freaking safe. It's a franchise where I love that so much of the time it is, like, off the seat of its pants, with kind of like, oh, how do we get out of the situation? Like, oh, we have this huge amount of money in a big safe that we're trying to get from a drug cartel guy. How do we get it out? We'll drive it out. Of course we will.
I don't know if I heard you mention that the safe is located in the police station.
Yes. It's like,
they pull it out of the police station.
Yeah, with 2 cars.
Yep, 2 Dodge Chargers, all you need.
That is all you would possibly need. But Ryan, you mentioned this is obviously, like, it sort of has a heist element to it, which the other movies had kind of tried to have that kind of basis, but this movie goes full out with the heist structure, where you have, like, Vin Diesel's Dominic Toretto, and Brian O'Connor's Paul Walker, and Mia Toretto, played by Jordana Brewster, sort of like the people that put together the heist. But you gotta get everybody for their specific jobs. And I think that really works for, like, especially reuniting us with so many other characters, like Tyrese Gibson as Ramon.
Yes.
From Too Fast, Too Furious.
Hey, it's Roman, not Ramon.
Of course, yes. Ludacris himself as Tej from Too Fast, Too Furious as well. Our man Han from Tokyo Drift.
Yes.
I would argue, like, the big stand-up where, like, every time I watch these movies, I'm like, man, why isn't Sung Kang, like, a big star? That dude deserves to be, like, a major star, because he has just oozes charisma the moment he walks out and snacks on something, which, to be fair, he's doing in 90%
I was going to say, or at least,
of
like, a spokesman for Nabisco or something.
Dude should be hyping all snack foods whatsoever. But Ryan, so would you say this kind of fits the heist movie angle, like giving everybody a fair share of a part to do?
Yeah, absolutely. It fits the heist angle really well, and I mean they even have that fun kind of like you mentioned, getting the team together, but like it comes down to even moments where like Vin Diesel will say something and Paul Walker's like, I know a guy, and then next Tyrese shows up, and it's like it has the classic heist structure that you would want to see in, like, you know, Ocean's 11 or any other Logan Lucky, like any other Soderbergh heist film I can reference.
Yeah, I mean, even down to, like, 2 underrated ones in this franchise, Don Omar and Tigu Calderon as Santos and Leo, the 2 guys who had been established in the previous movie, who they come in and have to do the whole thing where, like, oh, we have to blow up the bathroom so that we can note this exact same point where we can, like, get to the safe and all that's right underneath and all this other stuff. I think, like, everybody has a fair share of a role. Even Gal Gadot, pre-Wonder Woman, as Giselle, with the part you kind of mentioned about how she gets the fingerprint, which admittingly feels like the weird evolution of this franchise trying to get away from, oh, hey, here are, like, ladies in bikinis. But they can't quite avoid it all the time, so they're like, let's make it a plot point. It just feels like it's this weird thing, like, we're still keeping it true to the franchise, but also we're kind of trying to make it about, no, she's using her bikini to help, so it's feminist now, I guess, is it? The answer is no, it's not. No, it isn't.
She is fully aware of her feminine wiles. I look at it like it's the classic sort of femme fatale from like even James Bond movies and stuff, where they, men are stupid, especially Brazilian coke lords. I'm guessing. I hope none of them listen to this, or else I'm fucked.
That's our main audience is Brazilian.
That's a nasty stereotype about Brazilian coke lords.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm sure they're all very well-adjusted men. Or women. I don't know. I don't want to assume. But it never bothered me because it's like, it's a little silly, but, dude, these movies are silly. When you think about it, the fact of the matter is that all these dudes with all their tech and all their bullshit couldn't get the job done, and she just uses her feminine wiles and her natural beauty, and she's like, well, it's not that hard. You guys are overthinking it.
Ryan, who would you say is like your favorite of the crew, especially of the ones they kind of bring in? Who do you think is like kind of really stands out?
So not of like the main leaders like Toretto and Brian, but like of the crew, I would probably go. It's a real toss-up. I mean, Han is the obvious pick. Han is my dream boy. I love him. He's so cute. But I'm also I do like Roman, but in short bursts. He can either be really charming or he gets really grating, especially in later ones.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best use of Roman for me. I would agree, because I think Tyrese worked pretty well in Too Fast, Too Furious as like kind of like coming onto the scene. And then in Fast 5, I think it really works because he is, I agree, in short bursts, but also I think this is the best use of like making him seem like the idiot, as opposed to in the other movies I feel like they kind of make him the idiot, but also that he has like the wink, as opposed to he doesn't feel as self-aware here, particularly in the bit where he tries to romance the one security guard and then the other one comes in who actually can speak English, and he's like, it's like, hey, this says you're Caucasian, it's a tan. It's a very deep tan. I think it's the most genuinely funny he probably is in the franchise. And of course, Tyrese has my favorite acting moment in any of these films in this film. Yes. Where, if you weren't aware, in Too Fast, Too Furious, the relationship between him and Paul Walker, since they were the two leads, kind of hinted at it might be a bit more than platonic friendship. Like, it goes very...
Happy Pride Month.
Happy Pride Month, yes, to everybody. I mean, based on Too Fast, Too Furious, there's a lot of indication, like, oh, he likes wrestling in the mud, and he hates it when Paul Walker messes with them females and stuff like that. There's a lot of hints that he might have other feelings for the Brian O'Connor character, and the moment he finds out Jordana Brewster's character is pregnant, Tyrese has a flash on his face that says so much about what he has lost and what he can never have. And then he's like, oh my god, it's so great!
He looks like a little kid whose puppy got lost. And he's constantly waiting for the puppy, and his dad walks in the door, and he hears like the puppy's collar ringing, but he looks, and his dad is just holding the tattered collar. like the puppy's gone. Oh, like he was super excited, Hey, we want to tell you something, man. Let's tell you something personal about us. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm pregnant. Womp womp womp.
Oh, but it's so great! We love it!
Yeah. Oh, cool! Oh, yeah! I gotta go to my room. It's my allergies.
There's a bit of that, too. But I guess we should also talk about, with, like, Dominic Toretto and Brian O'Connor, I think that's the thing is, they obviously started this franchise so long ago, the two of them, and their bromance that happened there. And how it evolves is so interesting, where they're obviously enemies because, Paul Walker was this cop who was trying to track down Vin Diesel. But then as it's evolved, Paul Walker has basically, fulfilled his status as the worst cop ever and left eventually the FBI or CIA, whichever one he was fucking promoted to for some reason, and realizes, I should just be a thief with my buddy Dom. And their back and forth feels like it really is the heart of this franchise. And obviously that would kind of be lost once Paul Walker tragically passed away and he had to send off with Furious 7. But I think especially going back after seeing Furious 7, you can see so much of like how they're back and forth and how much of, especially Paul Walker's even just ability to be like, not a big flashy guy. He wasn't always the most expressive and talented ranged actor, but I think he had such like an honest, earnest kind of like fun with everybody, that when he's especially talking with Vin Diesel about like playing out the heist and some of this other stuff, it really works. Like, even my favorite bit of the two of them in this is when they're playing out the heist and Vin Diesel's like, finally we have 2 position drivers, which, by the way, I love the angle of that shot where he's just like right at the right angle where Vin is like looking off in the distance, but 2 drivers, and his 2 fingers pop into frame. And then Brian O'Connor's just like, we got that, man. It's just like, oh, they're buds. And they're gonna drive fast together. Would you agree that he would like their relationship is the true heart of what made this franchise work?
Yeah. Like, we talk about the other characters' relationships and how it is a family dynamic or whatever. And that's fun, and I do believe it when I see them playing off of each other. But, like, if there was, like, a brotherhood on display there, it really is Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. And it's like you said, Paul, he's not fucking Daniel Day-Lewis, but the dude he seemed like a genuinely cool guy, and he seemed to have a good rapport with everyone. And personally, I think the series lost so much with him.
And would you generally agree with that, Adam?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with it. And I think that's part of the problem with sort of our bad choice and even Tokyo Drift, which I don't get the hate for, but you don't have that sort of really sturdy, believable sort of bromance between these two. And they really, you can tell they were close in real life and that they were friends in real life. I mean, yes, Paul Walker is not Daniel Day-Lewis, but neither is Vin Diesel. But for some reason...
No, he's Laurence Olivier, of course, as we all know. Vin Diesel, Laurence Olivier every time.
Right. No! I've abandoned my NOS! They're really good together, man. Like, it started as sort of an idolization where Paul Walker really sort of idolized Dominic Toretto in a way. Obviously, he quit everything he could and did all that stuff to pal around with him still. But then it turns into this sort of really mutual respect and admiration for each other. And Vin Diesel starts respecting him for being, becoming a family man and trying to fly on the straight path. And from where it started to what it became, I mean, it's quite a growth on screen, and you believe every minute of it.
Yeah, I think particularly there's so many great scenes where after like whatever ridiculous action takes place, like we mentioned, like the whole sequence where we find out Paul Walker and Julianne Brewster having a baby. I love the whole toast that happens after that, where on paper that sounds so stupid, but every time I watch this movie I feel genuinely like, oh, they are a family. They found each other and they're toasting to be familia, like that. Or even after this ridiculous favela chase that happens, this great, awesome chase where people are like going through fucking tin roofs and all this other shit, just over the top. It crescendos with Julianne Brewster revealing that she's pregnant, like, I can't be doing this, which, for the record, you shouldn't have. If you knew this, you shouldn't have been doing this favela chase. But like, after like all this ridiculousness, Paul Walker finds out, and then Dom is off to the side, and she's like, Dom, we're always gonna be a family, right? And he's like, of course we are. It just got a bit bigger. And they all like hug. It's just like, this is so fucking silly, but god damn it if I'm not kind of emotionally verklempt about it.
Dude, that line made me cry last time I watched it.
That's the weird thing, is that it really like it's able to burst so much emotion. Even genuinely, it's weird how they bring back a character called Vince, played by Matt Schultz from the first movie. Who is this character who in the original is such a whiny little asshole.
He's the man. Vince is the man. Tank tops over regular tank tops.
Well, and he's grown because he went from 2001 Frosted Tips to having regular hair here. He's grown as a person 10 years ago.
That's true. That's true. Yep.
And also, he's not saying that one F slur. I'm glad he didn't. He's the one person ever doing this franchise, and I'm glad he didn't do it again.
He likes the word buster.
Oh, he does like the word buster. That's very true. But there's a point that's like kind of the encapsulation of all the like soap opera drama that I love, where they're arguing with each other in the middle of the one garage, like him and Paul Walker in particular are like going at it, and Vin Diesel's like, whoa, Brian O'Connor, get out of here, take some air, you can't fight with each other like this. It's just like all these like male egos are posturing at each other, and Vin has to be like, well, everybody step outside, get some air. He has to be the main arbitrator. That's why I love is they're able to go to these ridiculous soap opera lengths in the middle of this like fucking gearhead stupid silly movie. And of course, as Adam mentioned at the start of this, the big thing is this introduced Dwayne Johnson as Luke Hobbs into the series. And originally that role was, I love this, finding out this bit of trivia, that role was written for a Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah. I wish they would have done it and not changed a thing about the role. Like,
and at a certain point, they're just like, hey, Tommy, do you want to, like, gain some weight? She's like, how about you put my head on top of a big, muscular guy? CG it. That'll work.
But I'll snap both my goddamn ankles jumping off that tin roof.
I can't sanction this tomfoolery.
Very true, very true. But what I love is that with The Rock, he's coming in here and he's obviously adding his kind of like WWE star charisma. And this really launched his career after certain, because he'd been in plenty of movies before this, but none of them had quite launched him as a big action star type. And this was the movie that finally helped launch him to that point. And I think it's probably his best role in, like, especially a big blockbuster movie. But Ryan, I'm curious, because you're not a fan of like sort of the modern Rock persona, and we'll get more into that when we talk about Fate, because I think that's a big problem with that movie. But with Fast Five, why do you think he works there, and why you're more disappointed with his current career?
Well, I would say around this time, this was like a really good time for The Rock's career. Like you mentioned, I'm not a big fan, but the one thing I felt like he did really good here is he was able to match the level of like goofy masculinity that like Vin Diesel and all the other guys were bringing, but he was doing it in such a like aggressive way that he's almost just spitting out the dialogue. Like he can't even contain the words. He's so incredibly OP. Like, that's the only way I can describe him. He's overpowered, and he's immediately, you register him as a threat, and yet at the same time he's very watchable, because every line of dialogue he's giving is the silliest fucking thing someone could write on a piece of paper. And he's delivering it with the conviction of like a fucking Shakespearean actor.
Which is really what comes from his wrestling career, obviously, where he had to spout the most stupid bullshit for like promos or whatever. And then he comes out here, and I think his introduction in particular, where he comes out and he's just like, he has to drop the F-bomb at the start of this movie for the PG-13, where he says, "Stay the fuck out of my way." Instantaneously, he's like, this guy fits perfectly as a threat to these guys. And from there's all sorts of other stuff, like whether it's saying dialogue like the one I kind of referenced earlier with the like good news, bad news scenario, sir. Well, you know what, give me my dessert first. You know I like to eat that first, and then give me my damn veggies following it. Perfect. Or then even the physical stuff, like I mentioned the favelas chase, the bit where Vin Diesel is running and then The Rock fucking meets up with him by jumping through a window. Instantly just like, this is what cinema was made for, is moments like this. Just phenomenal, like the two of them running together. And also it just works because this is the time before like those two's egos really started clashing. Like as these movies started going around, and that's a big problem with Fate, which we'll get into, like the two of them aren't like feuding with each other, they feel more like an equal level. So when they face off against each other, particularly when they fucking meet each other at that racing compound, it's just like, what, we're just racing around here, and the Rock's just like, I'm on to you, Toretto, when they're like facing off against each other. It's so fucking great, exactly as everything I love about these. Adam, as the big wrestling guy, you gotta agree about that, right?
Yeah, without a doubt, man. I mean, yeah, The Rock fucking comes in and he crushes it. Like, he instantly fits in with this group of people, too, man. Not only is he a credible threat as far as even just body mass to Vin Diesel, because, I mean, he is bigger than Vin Diesel even, which is a feat, because Vin Diesel's a big motherfucker in these movies. But not only is he bigger than him, he's also, working for the man, and he's super capable of a foot chase, as well as a car chase, as well as a fist fight, as well as a gunfight, everything. Yeah, no, I think The Rock single-handedly maybe kept this franchise going because of this movie. Now, would it have still gone? Yeah, but would it have gotten as big as it did without him? I don't know, to be 100% honest. Because like you said, this movie made him a megastar. And then for him to keep coming back, for a couple more movies, and he was getting almost top billing and everything for him too. Like, people went to see his movies for Hobbs after a while. I mean, he's the only one who got a spinoff. Yeah, no, I think he's absolutely great in it. And that scene you just mentioned too is one of my favorite dumb scenes in this whole franchise, where they catch him at that car meet. And, he's with all these government agents. They all got their guns. And Vin Diesel, well, this is Brazil.
I love that moment.
Like, what the fuck? All of Brazil is behind Dominic Toretto now?
Yeah.
What has he done for them except ruin the fellas?
They're familiar.
I mean, excuse me, he outstretched his arms like the great Dominic Toretto pose And just like, that means everyone is welcome in Dominic Toretto's giant arms in Brazil. Just like, he's the hero of the people. Dominic Toretto.
That's true.
Another great moment in that scene is when Toretto's like, he's like, Brian, do you feel like you're arrested? And he's like, nope, not one bit. And without missing a beat, The Rock just looks at him. He's like, give it a minute, son. It'll sink in.
Yes.
So good.
That's the stuff that has almost like the energy you haven't gotten in like a big action movie since something like Predator, where like all the biggest people were like near each other. Not big in terms of star power, but big in terms of giant beefiness. Just like facing down against each other. And of course it leads to all the big action sequences. Of course, weirdly for this franchise, this is the first one where there's only one race that involves the police cars, which is a fun bit, where they bet $1 million on a race. But even there's a bit where they almost do a regular race where they go to that same place. They're just like, oh, hey, we're gonna have the big race. You know what? Your cars are our cars. Oh, yeah? And then they're like, come back like it's a fucking sitcom. It's like, boy, that was a fun race that we didn't show you because we don't have time for racing. We have to do more heist shit, which I'm kind of for, honestly, because the action sequences here are so phenomenal. Like, we'll talk about the big safe heist, but briefly, I want to hear the other favorite action sequence. Ryan, what's your other favorite big action sequence besides the big heist?
Besides the big heist, I'm kind of a sucker for the I'm a sucker for the train heist at the beginning. I just think it's really cool. I love Toretto's entrance on that thing. The double cross is just like really crazy. It's just insane.
Adam.
Well, the train heist in the beginning is great, and we've already mentioned it 800 times. But I love the favela scene. It's specifically one part of it too, where there's people everywhere, dude, and there's these criminals on sort of the ground with civilians, and they all got like bandanas over the face and everything. And then the Rock's crew just shows up on a roof and just recklessly unloads their guns onto them right to the street. And I'm just like, dude, what about the civilians? Like, there's people everywhere. And they are just fucking unleashing hell upon this street in this busy fucking like sort of ghetto. And I don't care. It's awesome. Like, it's awesome. Just like, kill them all. Fuck them. It's fantastic. It's so ludicrous.
Hey. I would.
Sorry.
He didn't sing that song. But I think for me, aside from the big safe heist, which we mentioned in a moment, I do really think the underrated MVP of the action sequences is the big one where Toretto and Hobb really where they fight each other. Everything pretty much from like when they're fighting in that one bathroom, where unlike in other movies, it feels like they both do get the shit beat out of them. Like, this isn't the whole thing, like, you have to punch me this one time and, like, match it like they would have for contracts in other movies. They beat the shit out of each other. And then even translates to, as they're trying to lead Toretto, like, out to extradition, like, the whole ambush that happens, and, like, where Hobbs' team dies and Dominic comes in with the shotgun. It's kind of fucking dope.
Yeah.
And yes, they absolutely beat the shit out of each other. It's like swinging 2 slabs of beef at a butcher shop at each other.
Very accurate. But of course, before we've been talking a lot about this movie, but we gotta mention the big safe thing, which I think is really the moment that like everyone sort of came on board with this franchise. And what I really love about this movie in particular, finding out more about the behind the scenes stuff, is that along with the train heist Ryan mentioned earlier, a lot of this stuff, not a lot of CG. There was obviously stuff to like kind of blur some edges, but even with this safe, a lot of it is them driving with a giant-ass safe down the streets of, in this case, Puerto Rico, and doing all this stuff. There's only one shot where they use CG, and do you all have any idea which shot that might be in the middle of that chase?
Is it when the thing, like, flips? The safe?
Do you mean, like, on the highway?
Yeah.
That is the exact shot, where, like, they do the 180 shot, and it, like, flies on the other side of the highway. That's the one shot where it's CG, but otherwise, that safe is going down Puerto Rico, even down to, they were so clear about this that for certain shots, there is, like, a pickup truck that has been shortened, and they put a safe cover over it, so there's a guy in there driving the safe down the streets of Puerto Rico, which I found out and was amazing.
I'm never gonna watch that scene the same way.
But you gotta admit, like, I think what works about it so much about the sequence is that it feels like this is the exact kind of putting one hat on an action sequence that works for the series, where it's like, okay, we could have like a normal chase where it's like, oh, they're being chased by the cops, but we have to add one ridiculous hat onto this. How about they're dragging a safe? And as Adam kind of mentioned earlier, likely just killing so many pedestrians. So many people should be dying here. They don't show anything, but like there's horrible carnage down the streets of Rio during this whole sequence. But at the same time, you don't care because you're so invested in like, they're driving this fucking safe down the streets of Rio. Amazing.
Yeah, they killed hundreds of people, dude.
Hundreds, I'm sure, yes.
And thousands, if even. I mean, they're taking on entire storefronts and shit with this safe. People outside eating and stuff, and they're just, a safe comes and wrecks the outside dining area. Yeah, but again, I don't care. Because I'm watching 2 Dodge Chargers pull a 12-ton safe, baby. Like, you don't get that anywhere else. It's impossible, but I will take it.
And the perfect punctuation point, of course, of having the safe end up on the highway and Hobbs being like, I'll give you guys a 24-hour head start, but I'm going to come after you. Don't you wait. It's like, all right, fine, but the money will stay with you. Sure, whatever, we'll leave. And then when fucking Hobbs opens up that safe and it finds out, oh, of course they put it inside the garbage truck. Makes a total sense, by the way. They'd be able to do that down the highway.
Yeah.
But just the fact that after Hobbs realizes, like, he fucking has the usual suspects moment where he finds all this out and realizes it, he just responds with a, oh, those rascals. They did it. They put one on old Hobbsy. So good. So great.
Yeah, because, I mean, what the fuck else can he do now? And he just gave him a day to get away with millions of dollars. They're fucking gone, man. Like, they're gone, bro.
Everyone gets their $11 million and everybody's happy. So happy. But guys, we've been talking quite a while about Fast 5, so quick, fast, final thoughts on Fast 5. Ryan.
It's the best one in the series.
Adam.
It's the best one in the series.
All right, now I'll just second that. It's the best one in the series. Yeah, that's right. 3 best in the series, for sure. Because we're done being fast. And we're about to get furious in a second. But first, here's a promo for an ESO show you can queue up right after ours.
Howdy, this is Cowboy Jim, and I'm here to talk to you about the Cigar Nerd Podcast. Nothing I like more on the old dusty trail than sitting down and listening to 2 good old boys who smoke cigars and talk about nerd things like movies and TVs and comic books and all that stuff. So saddle up and ride on over to CigarNerdPodcast.com. They're also on the ESO network. Yeehaw!
All right, now let's get into the fate of the Furious.
Dominic Toretto just went rogue.
You gonna turn your back on family?
I'm taking you down, Toretto.
Want to play like that?
If you're gonna catch Dom, you're gonna need a little help.
You want to tell me why you just put me in a room with this criminal?
You don't think that tight t-shirt's cutting off the circulation in your brain? You should get a bigger size. You guys are gonna work together. Love to.
Oh, damn!
Fire! Dom!
I don't want to go swimming. Ow! I got you, brother.
So, Fate of the Furious is the 8th entry in this franchise. Came out April 14th, 2017. Directed this time by F. Gary Gray. And the gap in between here is very important because you had after Fast 5, you had Fast 6, Furious 6. The title varies on that one as well for that particular bit. But a fun little like espionage movie introduces Owen Shaw that I thought worked pretty well. And then Furious 7, which, as Ryan kind of mentioned, there's some somberness to it, given that's the movie where Paul Walker had his tragic accident that he passed away during, and it was a lovely send-off to him at the end of that particular movie that really worked. And not just because of that, but so much credit to James Wan for, I felt like that one, in retrospect, really should have probably been the last one, not just because of Paul Walker, but also they exhausted the fuck out of how to use cars and action sequences in that movie. That movie goes so over the top with all the ways it uses cars. So you're wondering, how could really Fate kind of, get the franchise to recover after losing so much and going so over the top? And I would argue it doesn't quite do that. And I think it really is the point where the franchise loses not just, one particular character, but also a lot of its heart. This one feels a lot more soulless to me. And Adam, this was your bad choice, and I think you would agree.
Yeah, it's cold. It's a cold movie, man.
Not just because the last hour takes place in like the Antarctica, wherever the fuck it is.
Which feels like 2 hours. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of mean-spirited, sort of really dark places this one goes, which, I'm not against, sort of these long-running franchises changing it up and everything. But you had, 7 movies prior. To do it in the 8th one just feels like a misstep to me. And I hope they can recover from it in the next one. But yeah, this one just is tonally off to me.
Now, Ryan, as the Fast fan, would you agree that this is where it really is? It's such a sour mark for you, Ryan. Did fate hurt you?
This is the thing that leads to the thing I hate the most. So fate, I hate Hobbs and Shaw with every fiber of my being, but Hobbs and Shaw could never be without a Fate of the Furious, because everything I talked about earlier about this series feeling genuine and earnest and not made necessarily with the worst intentions creatively behind it, that falls flat here. It's just numbing and it's gross and it's not fun. That's probably the biggest thing I can say is there's not a lot of fun here.
I was a bigger fan, at least, of Hobbs and Shaw when I first saw it, and then the rewatch, I would agree. I think it doesn't work as well, mainly because it's so connected to this franchise. Weirdly, despite the fact that it wants to not be. It's such a weird movie. It feels like, why don't you just fucking have it be Jason Statham and The Rock do their own bullshit, as opposed to attaching it to Fast and Furious. Wouldn't make it a better movie, but would make it at least, like, less annoying to me that we're doing this. Especially because, like, this is where I agree with it becomes so much more mean-spirited, because there's the Charlize Theron character, who kidnaps a character we didn't even mention that was introduced in Fast 5 with Elsa Pataki, as the character who was initially sort of like one of the various folks that is part of Hobbs's team, and then ultimately becomes Dominic Toretto's lover in the other movies. She plays Elena Neves, and in this movie it's revealed that, she's been gone for so long because after, Fast 5 has a big tease with like, Letty is actually alive now, Michelle Rodriguez's character, and her and Dom are together, but Elsa Pataki's been just kind of like, hey, I'm off to the side, sure, the Rock saved me in the last movie, and that's about it. It turns out she was pregnant and had Dom's son, but both of them had been kidnapped by Charlize Theron's character, who is some sort of weird, like, she's a, like, Hannibal Lecter character who's having a whisper-off with Vin Diesel the whole movie. That just feels so weird. To be fair, it's the most entertaining thing about the movie is how much, like, she's just like, quid per quo, Dominic Toretto. You have no idea how I could defeat you. And Vin's just like, you think you can mumble less than me? I can mumble more than you, motherfucker. Don't you mess with my mumbling. Like, that's at least more entertaining to me than most of the other stuff in the movie. But unfortunately, with, like, that character, she's like this very cold villain who has no personality to her. She has these terrible hairdos that I mentioned. And then she's responsible for murdering a woman in front of her child and her lover. And that just feels like this is just too far for this franchise. It feels too mean-spirited and ugly in a way that's just kind of like, it puts a weird taste in your mouth because it just feels like we're betraying the familial aspect for like cheap drama. Not even like soap opera stuff that's fun. It's just like really cheap, ugly drama that feels unnecessary in a series like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the thing is, they want you. It's not even the fact that I don't know if it's more hardcore because you don't give a shit about the character, or that, the baby's right there. Like, in any other franchise, you'd be like, whoa, that's fucked up. In this one, it's like, yeah, it's fucked up because it just doesn't fit, dude. It just doesn't fit. Nothing has been that vile in these movies up until this point. And then, and I don't really, you guys already kind of mentioned Hobbs and Shaw and everything, but then not only what they do with the Deckard Shaw character, but also what they do with the Owen Shaw character, where you got to figure Owen Shaw was responsible for the Gal Gadot character's death, and God knows how many other deaths, and plus, he had Letty brainwashed and blah, 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 blah. But then they get this funny little thing where, Deckard's spinning a baby around. He's like, "You poop your pants," blah blah blah. And you're like, "Oh my god, what the? Well, you or him? Oh, it was him." And then, like the fucking one of the chipmunks, it just.
Well, especially, and also there was like the big back and forth between him and The Rock, which led to the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. When, keep in mind that Deckard Shaw was introduced in Furious 7, where he's like, "Oi, you tried to hurt my brothers, I'll hurt everyone you love, and also so many innocent people in a hospital." I love the opening of Furious 7 so much because it's like, oh, this is an irredeemable, monstrous Michael Myers serial killer man who has killed so many people, and he is our villain. That's so great. And then Deckard in this movie is just like, "Oh, I'm a British brute who likes to make all sorts of wisecracks about you, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson." Like, their back and forth is very limited in terms of its appeal. I think it works the best, and I think one of the better sequences in this movie is, like, their prison breakout fight. I think is a fun sequence. But, like, that's really where it should have stopped, because after that point, they go back and forth, but then have a begrudging respect, because, like, oh, you were part of the military, and some guy fucked you over, and then the Cypher character, it turns out, was the one that brainwashed your brother into being evil, so now we're friends. That's where it goes from, like, fun soap opera convoluted to just bad blockbuster convoluted, in a way that just doesn't engage me at all.
This movie feels like a cash grab to me. Obviously, it had a huge budget behind everything, but it felt like a desperate attempt to sort of keep the franchise going. After, which I agree, the previous movie was a perfect end. They could have just stopped and been done. Every character sort of had its comeuppance and its genuine closure to it and everything, and this one just, I don't know. I think it's just kind of lazy.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that in the other Fast and Furious movies, they never felt lazy. They felt ridiculous, but they never felt like they were sort of just lazily trying to stretch this together, as opposed to here, part of it is just the sacrifice of, like, having so many people at the height of their egos. Like, this was the start of all the infamous feuding that happened on social media with these fucking people, where The Rock called a bunch of, like, anonymous male co-stars candy asses. And apparently that was revealed, like, oh, him and Vin Diesel had conflicts on set, which you can tell from this movie because they barely share any scenes together. And so shows that, like, they created the entire Dominic Toretto storyline to, like, get Vin Diesel away from The Rock. And then also, even The Rock, when he's around the other guys, like, he mostly shares most of his scenes with Statham. He barely even interacts with the other people that much.
Yeah, right, 100%. Well, obviously, like you alluded to earlier, the descent was clear what was going on. Nobody, he didn't want to work with anybody, and nobody wanted to work with him.
Another thing with The Rock is that you can kind of tell that this is also the point where, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick H. Willems said after Furious 7, The Rock stopped working with directors that challenged him, and he just started playing The Rock, because the Hobbs in this is not the same Lucas Hobbs of the previous films that we've been around him. Like, he is The Rock. He is not Hobbs anymore.
Right. I think that's really, and you're referencing Patrick H. Willems, who's a great video essayist on YouTube. You should all watch. We would recommend his work. But I think that's even clear from, like, the second scene in this movie, where it starts off with, like, this big chase in Cuba between Dom and this one guy trying to, like, get, like, the Muppet Studebaker, basically. Like, he's chasing that fucking thing, which is a fun sequence. I think also one of the few good things I like about this movie, that opening chase, I think is fun. And then it leads right into The Rock doing this whole thing that feels like a fucking Game Plan 2, where he's getting his daughter's, like, soccer team to, like, do a big, like, Samoan dance, like, in front of this other competing team to intimidate them. And it just feels like this is no longer a Fast and Furious movie. This is no longer Luke Hobbs. This is The Rock is in this Fast and Furious movie at this point. And I agree that I think he's not really challenging himself that much anymore after this point. And even then, like, even if he's not challenging himself, his star persona doesn't really work that much for me, aside from, like, maybe the first Jumanji movie that's the same year, I think, is him being fun a bit. But otherwise, it's a lot of just, like, The Rock posturing his, like, online persona rather than actually playing a tough guy character. And he didn't have a lot of range, necessarily as a, like, tough guy actor, but at the same time, there's a world difference between this Hobbs and the Hobbs in the other movies, or even The Rock and stuff like Pain and Gain, which we've talked about on the show, where he's able to be the tough guy, but also do a completely different spin on it. This is just like, I am playing The Rock here. I am not acting, and I'll be on set for 4 hours, and then I will leave.
Yeah, pretty much. And, this has become his persona, like you said, and sort of everything post this, or maybe even a little bit of pre this. He sort of found his niche as the big sort of romantic lead, yet muscled action star who can still crack a joke. and is real humble and is a family man at the same time. It's like it's all over the place, man. And I do like The Rock, I really do. But like Ryan said, the Hobbs from Fast Five to the Hobbs in this one, it's legitimately a completely different character.
Yeah, the Hobbs in Fast Five would never call Taylor Swift Tay-Tay. That's facts.
No, God, no. He's not coaching his kid's soccer team. He's not, just having one-off one-liners with Jason Statham while they're fixing a car.
Yeah, he's not being buddy-buddy with the guy who, I don't know. What did he do? What did he do previously? Yeah, he killed Han.
We brought him to the fucking barbecue.
Also tried to kill him in the previous movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Like he blew him out of a window. Yeah, buddies. Hey!
And
all that ends with.
There's other franchise betrayal stuff here. Like, there's one, we mentioned kind of briefly, Scott Eastwood's character, who is the assistant to Mr. Nobody, who I thought was a great addition in Fury 7. The Kurt Russell character is just sort of like the, hey, I'm the cool guy who's just part of the big government organization that's mysteriously watching all of you guys. I'm nobody. That's what you can call me. But here's my apprentice, Scott Eastwood, the most charismatic man who's ever lived. And it also feels so weird where it's like he's integrated into the team so quickly, and it's just like, this motherfucker, are you trying to embrace Brian with this guy? If so, terrible move. Awful.
You know what also really hurts his character, too? Well, a lot that hurts his character is that it's Scott Eastwood that betrays it. But another thing that really hurts the character is that they pair him up with the loudest, most brash character in the fucking franchise against Tyrese. They have him and Tyrese have this sort of constantly quid pro quo, and it's just like the charisma is just... He's just getting eaten alive the whole time.
I feel like Scott Eastwood could work into the series. If you guys have seen Wrath of Man, I know Tom has.
Yeah.
He's kind of fun in it. Like, that movie generally is kind of fun. And I feel like you could have him be in there, but you can't just have him be a watered-down cop because you want Brian back. And that's the problem, is all he's there is so you have like a pretty boy, blonde boy that you could be like, oh, that's the new Brian. And it's gross. It's just gross.
I mean, speaking of gross, to be fair, we mentioned Tyrese. I think the back and forth him and Tej have here is where it gets from like, kind of toxic in Fast Five, but at least like their toxicity is always like put down upon, like, you idiots, as opposed to in this movie, the way they are going after Natalie Emmanuel, who was introduced in the last movie. I thought, like, she was kind of fun. She could grow into being something more. And in this movie, it's just kind of like suffering these fools is fucking bullshit for so long in this fucking movie. And by the end, her comeback is just like, you guys don't know my last name. Like, we could have established this a lot easier and just nipped this in the bud. Because, like, this is where it really just gets, like, they're fighting, like, for her like she's a fucking object in a way that, even for this franchise, feels gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also, even just on the pure base level, like, guys, why are you talking about the integrity of the characters in Fast and Furious? What about the action sequences? F. Gary Gray, who I think is a solid director in general, and some other things like Friday or Straight Outta Compton was right before this he had done. I think this movie shows so much of, like, the previs stuff you get in other, like, big blockbuster franchises, because in the other movies, like I mentioned with Fast 5, they were flying by the seat of their pants and actually doing a lot of the practical stuff with the safe. Here, it's very clearly, like, one of many examples of, like, we're going to shoot this on a soundstage in Atlanta. And feels it every single time. I know some things are even practical, but the way they even, like, assist CG and stuff like that, none of the action feels that exciting. Especially with, like, stuff that sounds kind of cool. Like, hey, the zombie cars are going to attack everybody in New York. They're remote controlled. That sounds great. It looks just kind of like whatever in this sequence. It feels, once again, very cold. And then by the time we get to the big Antarctica submarine chase thing at the end, that sequence goes on for fucking ever. It's so long.
It is the longest, blandest action beat in a movie, maybe ever. It takes, it is so long. I would say maybe it rivals sort of, as far as like, okay, we get it. It's like the final battle in Endgame. We're like, dude, okay, we got it. And all the CGI assists and everything. It's just so long and boring and bland. Like, I get it, man. What the fuck? Okay, there's a sub. Okay, All right. Okay. Oh, we're doing. Oh, they got fucking magical snowplows that they can switch to the back of their trucks. Cool. Oh, they're fucking sideswiping torpedoes. All right, cool. Oh, now they got to take over the boat. All right, that's good. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, they're also. Oh, okay. I mean, it's literally non fucking stop, and none of it feels like it has any weight or gravity to it. It's just boring.
To slightly defend the Endgame battle, even though, oh my god, someone needs to defend this poor highest grossing movie of all time. At least that sequence had like more fun character moments as opposed to in this movie, like most of the characters are just kind of like positioned like action figures to do things, except for like the one that feels like, oh, it's kind of stand up, but in a negative way is when Tyrese gets like his shootout after he's been dragged around, which feels so much like a Tyrese insisted this happen kind of thing, where he shoots like all those guys after being dragged on the fucking door. It's just like, oh, this, it just feels so poor. Do you agree, Ryan? There's not a lot of fun action in this either.
I didn't really expect to come on here and defend Endgame or really any Marvel movie, but
that's the main reason we got you on here. This was a trap.
Yeah,
this was a heist
this is
to get
the
that.
gotcha journalism of the episode. The worst shit in Endgame is so much more fun than the best shit in Fate of the Furious. It's that fucking final Antarctica bullshit is so boring. And it takes forever. And you're right, it does feel like some shit that Tyrese just insisted, so he looks cool, he gets a moment. And that's all that is that everyone gets their little moments. And they all can go home and then we can have a barbecue with the guy who murdered our friend. And then we're done.
Drink fucking Budweiser instead of Corona.
Budweisers.
It's all bad.
Well, we should probably get to, like, starting to wrap up on this a bit, but Ryan, before you do your final thoughts, I want to know, how can this franchise turn things around? What do you hope from F9 can really do to, like, really turn this around from here? And as you even mentioned with, like, Hobbs and Shaw, what does it need to do to get back on your side?
I feel kind of split on this. They made a great step getting Justin Lin back. The other part of me is the trailers don't do very much for me. And also, I am a little bit worried that Cypher is still in play. I kind of miss when it was just like low-level criminal activity we were driving against. I'm hoping that whatever it's gonna do, that it's well set up, that we get the characters back that we love, and that we get, I think both Fast Five. I mean, you mentioned it's a starting point, but I also have always seen it as kind of an ending in of itself. At least for those first 4 films, I think it works as a perfectly suitable ending. And I think Fast and Furious 7 is a really great ending. My hope is that maybe they just turn this, like, really low point and maybe start building up for a better ending. If we're really going to end it with 11 films, let's just end it really well.
Okay, Adam, how do you think F9 can turn things around?
Oh boy, I'm really nervous that it's even going to be able to, man. The Charlize Theron thing is probably my biggest sort of worry about it as well. I find it completely ridiculous and also kind of amazing that John Cena is Vin Diesel's brother somehow. That, we're just now learning about. And he's also a super, like, badass spy, like whatever he is. Kind of fun, kind of could be great. Looks like there's going to be some fun action bits, but I just, Justin Lin coming back, it brings a little bit of hope, but I don't know, man. I think 9's going to sort of maybe be the beginning of the end. Like, obviously they've talked about only going to 10, but let's face it, if they keep making money, they'll keep making them, and these movies make a lot of money.
I don't know, to be fair, Vin Diesel, like, adds on another film every time they talk to him about it. It's just...
Yeah, he literally just did, like, today or yesterday in some interview, he said, "What do I mind doing, like, a Toretto spinoff or a prequel?" Oh, great. So, it's just, it should have ended with 7. It's not like I'm not going to see 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, however many they do, I'm going to watch them. But my enjoyment level has just gone down. And this has either got to be the beginning and the end, or a complete 180 from the 8th movie, and they try to go in a different direction, which I don't see happening from the trailers.
I think it's really that they have to get that earnestness back. Like, I agree that I think it was fun when they were doing this more street level stuff, but even like the trilogy that is like 5, 6, and 7 works so well, I think, because despite how silly things got, there was still an earnest heart that was there at the center. And I think that's what they really need to get back. And I think not just the presence of Justin Lin, but even of Han, no matter how fucking ridiculous I'm sure the explanation is gonna be for like Han coming back. At the same time, getting him back, and I think managing to balance out the ridiculousness with at least that earnestness and that familial element, I think is really what's missing. And I hope at least, with the lack of The Rock in it, as much as it's worrying about like, oh, the Hobbs was so great in like the Fast 5, 6, and 7, at the same time, if that's necessary to get Vin Diesel to stop being on sort of a high horse and to like be more invested in like his other co-stars like he should be and has been in previous movies, I hope that's at least the element that works, where it's like, okay, we're going to lose Hobbs and Shaw, who were fun at least in some of the previous movies as opposed to Fate, but we're getting Han in return, and we're getting more of that familial element to it. I think it'll be on more of a right track, but I agree, if it doesn't do that with F9, it might be a make or break moment for me. That's my big soap opera Fast and Furious thing. It's just like, is this the end of Tom's fandom for Fast and Furious? Where could this possibly go? Well, on that note, we could maybe replicate our last movie final thoughts in terms of like, can we all mutually say worst of the franchise with Fate?
I think so, yeah.
Of the straight Fast and Furious franchise, yes.
Right, and even like I'm at least with you that I don't think Hobbs and Shaw is very far behind it. I think it would be my second least favorite.
Well.
Yeah, and Adam kind of likes that they allowed this guy who murdered Han to have like a fun spin-off with The Rock.
No. I like the movie as an action movie, but yeah, it's very problematic.
No, that's fine. You hate Han. That's cool, man. That's just, some people don't like Han.
That's fine. Sung Kang is listening to the episode and he's crying about it.
Yeah.
I thought Adam loved me.
It's Brazilian drug.
He's like, Adam's my favorite guy on the podcast.
Our audience is Brazilian drug czars. And
Sung Kang, big patron on the show, loves it. But on that note, it's time we got to our next segment on the show. But first, here is a little message from the ESO crew that we fully endorse.
Welcome to Dr. Geek's Laboratory.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Geek here with a shout out to all the scientists who worked tirelessly to bring a COVID-19 vaccine into reality. Let's face it, creating something of this magnitude is a miracle worthy of Dr. McCoy himself. And now, Dr. Geek needs you to do your part. Remember, each shot is one small step back to normal, one giant leap to putting the pandemic behind us. We can do this. For more information, visit vaccines.gov to find your nearest provider.
Alright, so now we're on to the double review, where each week, Adam and I, and a guest, if they have some options available, will program the best and worst possible double feature related to the topic that we're doing, in this case being to the Fast and Furious franchise. A note, as we have done for previous franchises, something like Fast and Furious, we're going to open it up to include films that aren't just a part of the series, but also are adjacent, like maybe were influences from the past of this franchise, or films from those that are involved with the franchise, stuff like that. And Ryan, I understand you at least have a good double feature, right? You have 2 movies you would recommend.
Yeah, because I think they're fun. They're
right.
Kind of fun, so bad they're good movies, I guess is the way I would describe them.
First, though, my choices here, I have one is one that was an influence on the franchise, and then the other is one that I think was definitely influenced by and includes somebody from the franchise. For my recommendations, I would say 2 great movies would be one, Walter Hill's The Driver, which is more of like a down-to-earth kind of crime thriller movie that involves Ryan O'Neal as a guy who's sort of like driving around kind of like a mercenary for hire type. It involves some like 70s detective work and stuff like that. The big influence I can see from this particular movie is the car chases in this are stunning. There are some of the most phenomenal car chases in this movie. It goes very over the top with some of them, particularly the final chase, I think was clearly an influence for some of these people, even though obviously it's the 70s, so they're not going too far over the top with their use of cars. No one's dragging safes in this one. Like, it has some of that Walter Hill over-stylized stuff that works for it. And then the other one is a movie that involves another franchise that Mr. Vin Diesel was involved with. I have XXX The Return of Xander Cage, which, keep in mind, Not a fan of the Xander Cage franchise overall. Triple X I thought was kind of a bore, and I haven't even seen the second one with Ice Cube. But I think Triple X The Return of Xander Cage is just the right amount of silly, crazy, over-the-top stuff to complement the Fast and Furious franchise so well. I think particularly with the sort of diverse cast of characters they bring in, of all sorts of different folks that have their weird own extreme sports elements to them that are a lot of fun. And even like Xander Cage becomes basically Dominic Toretto as an extreme sports guy, where like his introduction is him climbing off of a pole, and to get away from the cops that are chasing him, he skis down the fucking jungle. It is such a tremendous opening, and from there goes even more berserk and bizarre. From there, would definitely, I think, recommend those two, especially if you're a fan of the Fast franchise. And then for my two bad, both I think are ones that came out of Fast and kind of tried to replicate their style but didn't quite work. First, I have a movie called Stretch, which is from Joe Carnahan. It's a more low-budget movie starring Patrick Wilson that basically involves him as a driver who's going around, and also sort of like in a similar fashion to the other Driver movie. But it goes too bizarre, I think, in a way that kind of gets old. Ed Helms keeps popping up as this one sort of like ghostly character that's in his face all the time. It feels a bit more obnoxious. It kind of feels like the movie that when people hate Fast and Furious movies are kind of thinking of this. Or my other choice I think similarly feels like that, which is another Statham vehicle, The Meg, which I think goes over the top in all the bad ways that, say, a Fate does. And is far too in on the joke, as opposed to being a totally sincere big dumb shark movie. It feels like it's a, hey, are we doing a big dumb shark movie? Guys, you can't wink to me when you're spending this much money. Doesn't work for me. So those are mine.
Agree with your bad, for sure. And, yeah, I guess I agree with your good, too. So, yeah, you did pretty, you hit it on the head there, Chief.
I thought you weren't a fan of The Return of Xander Cage.
I'm not, but it is fun. I get what you're saying about it. I do think it's a terrible movie, but the action beats are pretty ridiculous and fun, much like how they became in the Fast franchise. So I understand your recommendation. My good choices, I have another heist movie, which has a great, great car chase scene in it. I have the Robert De Niro, John Reno, Ronin. Just an understated sort of heist thriller movie. Not the greatest that the genre's ever produced, but as far as for a car chase, it's pretty spectacular. The car chase you do get in it. And my other one, and it's from 2003, and it's actually a remake, and it is incredibly influenced by the Fast and the Furious franchise, and in fact stars Charlize Theron. I have the remake of The Italian Job. Again, not an amazing, like, perfect movie, but it's super entertaining. It's super fun, and also has really good car chase scenes. Really, really fun. And then for my bad, I have, which was a video game movie, Need for Speed. Just a fucking bore fest. You know, it's the first thing that fucking Jesse from Breaking Bad did after the show ended, basically. And it failed on every level. It's super, super dull and boring, and it really shouldn't be. But believe me, it is. And then I also have one that came out like right after like Torque and movies like that. I have Biker Boys, which starred like Lawrence Fishburne and Lorenz Tate. And the reason I put this in here, because it also stars Kid Rock as a character named Dog. Yeah.
I'm in.
It's really fucking bad. It's basically about Lawrence Fishburne was the head of this African-American biker gang that all rode crotch rockets, and something happens to him, so his son has to step up and take over the gang. It's really fucking dull, man. Like, it's really, really dull and boring. But, you know, hey, a lot of those came out, and that might be the worst of them at that time.
This is interesting because I have not seen any of the films you just mentioned.
You'd be for the better, honestly.
Well, no, even with the two you recommended, of Ronin and the Italian Job remake, I have not seen those either. I've heard Ronin is quite good for years, obviously. And then in particular, with the Italian Job, it's very interesting you mentioned that, because the director of that film is F. Gary Gray.
Yep.
Yeah, who did Fate. And I've heard that's a much better movie. It was also an influence, because that was like 2003, and from what I'd heard, that was a big influence on their eventual turn in like Fast and Furious and Fast 5 to doing something a bit different.
Yeah, you could definitely see on screen.
And even though I haven't seen your bad ones, this is kind of interesting because I know what Ryan's choices are. And I think this makes it kind of fascinating. Ryan, what are your 2 good choices you'd recommend to people?
This is awkward. One of us is gonna have to change, Adam. So I chose 2 that I really get a lot of enjoyment out of, but they're perfectly, like, so bad they're good movies. They're not genuinely good, but they are a lot of fun. The first one I will start with is Need for Speed.
Look, hey, I'm glad it's that, not Biker Boys. So I'll take it.
Oh, wait till you hear the second one. So Need for Speed, I think, is really fun. I think they had a lot of really cool practical crashes and stuff. I think Jesse from Breaking Bad was doing his best, and I think that, you know, it could have worked as, like, a side thing, like a Tokyo Drift style movie. Like, if they wanted to combine this with the Fast and Furious movies, I wouldn't hate it. I don't know. I think it's fun. It's nothing amazing, but it's just, like, a cool, like, as far as video game movies go, it's better than most of them. And then the second one is Torque. And Torque fucking rules. I got nothing bad to say about Torque. It's so fun. Adam Scott is on 100. It is the funniest movie. It is for motorcycle movies what people envision the Fast and Furious is for cars. And the director described it as a dumb movie for smart people. And as a fan of this film, he's right.
You know, we have talked about Torque previously on the show. Ages ago. We talked about that with City of God, another one of our great weird double features of those 2 movies. Because they were both January releases was the topic of that episode, which was a very interesting back and forth. But I think what we said about Torque then, I think, is very true now, is that it's weird how that movie was satirizing the Fast and Furious in, like, 2004. So it was just like, man, these movies are ridiculous, right? And then those movies went so beyond what's so ridiculous in Torque. I just think it's weirdly, like, pathetic as a satire in an interesting way. And I like we did mention that as much as we had, like, mixed kind of thoughts about Torque, it does have an amazing Adam Scott performance. He is definitely on 100 in that particular film. But Adam, I think now it's time for you to fight Ryan about Need for Speed.
No, you know, like he said, he even said it's a bad movie, but it's entertaining, it's good, and I understand that. I don't really find entertainment out of it because I do sort of can only see a Fast and the Furious ripoff. But you know, hey, to each their own, man. It just didn't do it for me. But I do know there are people who are fans of that movie, and apparently I know one by first and last name basis. So I guess I got that going for me.
Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, this proves to me I need to see Need for Speed. I need to find out where I lie in this particular thing. Oh, who's going to have this tiebreaker? We'll have to find out, folks. But thank you all for listening as we get into the end of the show. We'll be doing our picking for next week, so stay tuned for that at the end of this. But we want to thank some people like you all for listening, but also Chris Oliver for the intro and outro music used in our show. Listen to more of his music at chrisoliver.bandcamp.com. Thanks to Christian Thor Lally for the artwork. He does artwork at Night of Water. That's K Night _ water. And thank you to all our patrons over at patreon.com/TEDBpod, where for just $1 a month, you all get to vote in polls for stuff that we cover for the show, and also listen to bonus podcasts like coming up soon, folks. There's going to be a lot of stuff. First of all, we do our On the Edge of Relevance show where we talk about modern movies that have come out recently. We'll be doing one for F9. You'll get to hear the conclusion of my worry of, like, will this break me from the franchise? Adam and I will be talking about that. It'll be Adam's return trip to the cinema.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it.
Well, because you haven't seen the movie yet. They'll have to find out what you do.
And I haven't gone to the cinema yet, and I don't know if I'm ready. But, hey, we'll try.
Well, we'll probably talk about that as well on that bonus episode. And then also, we'll be doing the monthly one we usually do, where we have one monthly bonus episode at least that's like something a bit more specific, and we'll be doing our top 10 favorite character actors list. That'll be coming out very soon, which is also the most agonizing list we've ever had to do, because we've been poring over this for months now. Adam?
Oh my god, I don't even know if I can do it.
Oh, all these cliffhangers that are leading up to you listening to the Patreon. Just $1 a month, patreon.com/DEDBpod, just $1 a month. But we also wanted to thank our guest, Ryan Corderman, mi familia. Ryan, welcome back. You're always invited back to our barbecues where we do drink Corona and not fucking Budweiser. Ryan, do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, just follow me on Letterboxd at Ryan Corderman, Corderman, and on Instagram at Ryan_Corderman, Corderman.
Yes, his Letterboxd in particular is very fun for his very small joke reviews that are very entertaining every time I see him. But you can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at DEDBpod, where you can contribute some feedback, as well as doubleedgedoublebill@gmail.com, all spelled out for email for feedback on anything like that. We'll likely read it on the show. And, if you can't support us monthly on the Patreon, why don't you buy our merchandise over at the TeePublic ESO store? There's a link in the show notes for that, where you can, buy a shirt, or buy a cup, or buy so many other things with our faces on that logo. You can just help that because it gives us a bit of a feedback, so it helps us out here. And if you just do what, Adam? What do they need to do?
Fucking hell. Buy our merch. Buy our merch.
I make him do that every episode, Ryan. It's like music to my ears. It's like...
Yes. Fine. As a stupid joke about the critic. And yet here we
This is the content I come here for.
Look, it's our running joke. Like, every fast movie needs to have a big car chase. Every episode needs to have Adam saying that catchphrase. That's your catchphrase. That's your ride or die.
Yep.
For more of my individual stuff, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as well, as @NotTheWho'sTommy. I also do some writing at places like marianithomas.wordpress.com and also film-cred.com, which I should mention, around the time this episode, like this week, it's coming out. I know Conan O'Brien's last Conan show is airing, and I have a piece I'm writing about the monumental imprint on television comedy that Conan O'Brien has had. That piece will probably up on Film Cred around this week, hopefully.
Excited to read that, because Conan O'Brien is the man.
Nice.
And you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Atom or Adam. It's ATOM_OR_ADAM. And I'm also on Letterboxd at Schwanson. That's SCHWANDTSON.
Yes, and if you want more of our great stuff, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on ESO, why not dig into all the other great shows, or you can even dig into our archives on our Podbean channel for some episodes even before we joined the ESO network. And if nothing else, if you can't buy the merch, if you can't support the Patreon monthly, the completely free way to help us out is to rate, review, or share the show around, because that gets us more visibility. That gets more people ingrained into our own Double-Edged Double Bill family. But now it is time to do our picking for next time. And folks, we are covering another big action franchise next time, because it is the 30th anniversary coming up of a pretty big movie. Not the first movie in this particular franchise, but the second and arguably even more massive and successful one. We are covering in honor of the 30th anniversary of T2, the Terminator franchise, which is one we've definitely wanted to cover for a bit. And there's at least two good ones and a lot of bad ones that we potentially cover. Ryan, how do you feel about Terminator as a franchise?
There's so much more bad than good.
But the good's pretty great, right?
It's good.
It's pretty great. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. But as we usually do, Adam and I both have two picks that we've assigned numbers between 1 and 10 for. I have the two bad picks this time. Adam has the two good. When we have a guest in particular like Ryan, they get to pick a number between 1 and 10 for both Adam's good and my bad choices. And whichever number that gets closest to between the two choices we have, that'll end up being the good and bad feature we do for the show. Though keep in mind, there is a rule that we instigated about a month ago or so of the Godfather rule, where Adam and I each have a single veto we can do for a movie. We have it for the next year or so until May, And we have one chance where if we hear something, either a good or bad choice, and we don't like it, we can say, actually, I'll take the cannoli as the magic words to say, nope, we're going to do the other one.
Okay.
Are you excited by this new rule, Ryan?
I actually really like this.
Well, Mr. Fancy Pants, why don't we just see if anyone's going to take that cannoli? Why don't you do, for Adam's 2 good choices, number between 1 and 10?
T2.
Okay, well, funny enough, at number 2 is T2. So you hit that right on the fucking head, you jokester, yet clairvoyant motherfucker. So, Thomas, did you want to take the cannoli?
For T2, I will not take the cannoli on. I'm a big fan of T2. Though, yeah, I'm very curious and would love to talk about that at length.
Yeah, for sure. Then number 9, I had the original. You know, if you're going to pick 2, might as well go with the 2 best.
Yes, very true, very true. Well, now, Ryan, for my 2 bad choices, pick a number between 1 and 10.
4.
That's very interesting, Ryan. Because actually, at number 3, I had the 4th entry in this franchise, which I know Adam and I think have a bit of contention about. I have Terminator Salvation.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's the one I like. I was hoping that's what it would be.
Oh, shit, that's right. You do also like that. Adam's also a
Yeah.
fan. So I'm guessing, Adam, you're not taking the cannoli on this one.
No, definitely not. I'm excited to talk about that one because I think it's quite good.
I designed the perfect Terminator episode, you guys.
That's true. To be fair, also on the other side of things, at number 8, I had one that I would argue is probably my other one that I like besides the first 2. I have Terminator Dark Fate.
No, that's good, but we did better.
Yeah, I'm good.
Salvation's cool.
I intentionally went for the one that both Adam really liked and I like a bit more than some of the other contentiousness. So that's very interesting. We'll have a lot to talk about with both those features. But until then, everybody, it's time to end the show. And as with every single Fast and Furious movie, this must end with our barbecue with our familia. And guess what, Deckard Shaw? You're not fucking invited.
Jason Statham is, though.
Yeah, Jason Statham himself, yes, please come. We love you. Movies and stuff.
We love the Meg.
Yes, just
Forget
make
what
sure.
he said.
Just keep Deckard Shaw out of this, Jason. Don't bring him. Bring all your other great, diverse characters of British
Bring
guys.
Chef Chilios.
Fuck yeah, bring Chef Chilios. Good night, everybody.
My family. Whoa.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping for the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.